Hi, this is Florence Newton, and this is an audio abstract for our publication titled Functional Movement Screen Score Does Not Predict Injury in English Premier League Youth Academy Football Players. The research was conducted at Arsenal Football Club in collaboration with the Edinburgh University, Salland University and University College London. I would first like to thank all the authors listed here for their contribution. So why did we do this research? The focus on youth development in English football is increasing. The rise in playing and training time necessitates the need for injury prevention initiatives so players can develop to their maximum potential whilst ensuring their ongoing health. The Functional Movement Screen, probably best known as the FMS, is an evaluation tool assessing movement patterns of an individual, in which players obtain a score depending on how well or how poorly they can execute the FMS movements, for example a squat. The reliability of the FMS is quite well established, and various studies have also suggested a link between subjects with composite scores of 14 or less and an increased risk of musculoskeletal injury. The FMS is a tool that is commonly used by elite football professional teams and academies, and while having one tool that can identify or predict a player that will go on to be injured would be fantastic, the research and our practical experience is showing us that it's probably not so simple. Injury occurrence is very complex and dynamic. Within Arsenal Football Club, we use the FMS as a tool to inform our injury prevention practices, and we wanted to know in our cohort if FMS had any association or predictive value with musculoskeletal injury of our players. Basically giving us more confidence in making decisions based on these data. Therefore, we decided to do just that and analyse the association and predictive power of FMS with injury in our academy players. Our principal aim was to understand for ourselves and impact practice, and our second aim was to share our findings with the football medicine community, as there were currently no published papers in our population, i.e. the elite youth footballers. So what did we do? In summary, this was a prospective cohort study of 84 male players from Arsenal Football Club. Players completed the FMS during pre-season, and all non-contact injuries sustained during matches and training were recorded for the 2013-14 season. Injuries were further categorised into overuse and severe injuries. In the table you see on the screen now, the FMS scores were compared between injured and non-injured players. We used effect sizes to quantify the magnitude of the difference between the two groups, and as you can see there were no differences regardless of injury definition used, with p-values greater than 0.05 and trivial to small effect sizes. As the FMS composite score is made up from 7 individual tests, some of which likely have greater relevance to football than others, we decided that possible relationships between injury and individual subtests would be investigated, as well as the number of asymmetries displayed during the test. Age group was also investigated as an independent variable. Here we can see the result from our analysis of association. As you will see in this table, we found no association with FMS and non-contact injury. Next, we looked at the predictive power of FMS, in other words, the ability of FMS to predict that a player will be injured. To do this, we used a receiver operating characteristics curve, in which the true positive rate is plotted against the false positive rate for different cut points for a diagnostic test. We used it to assess the predictive power of the FMS composite score for each injury definition and to identify cutoff scores that maximise specificity and sensitivity. The accuracy of the test is measured by the area under the ROC curve. An area of 1 represents a perfect test and 0.5 a worthless test, i.e. it is the same as flipping a coin heads or tails. As you can see, our ROC curve analysis for all injury groups revealed no predictive power. In other words, the FMS did not predict injury in our cohort. So overall, the main findings of the study were that in elite EPL Academy players, there were no significant differences in FMS composite score observed between injured and uninjured groups, regardless of injury definition used. There were no significant relationships observed between injury and FMS, and the FMS had a poor predictive power for non-contact injury. But what does this mean for us in practice? Does it mean we should bin the FMS? Firstly, we have never used the FMS as a predictive tool for injury. That is to say, creating at-risk groups based on FMS score is not something we would advocate for. Rather, in practice, we use it to provide information on individual players and their movement ability, which in turn allows us to prescribe a training programme. For example, it may still help in identifying those players who have not fully recovered from previous injury, and specifically in youth players, identifying those who may be ready or not for advanced training techniques based on their movement competency and training age rather than chronological age. As with most studies, we need to acknowledge some limitations. Firstly, exposure data wasn't available, and differences in exposure time between injured and non-injured groups may have contributed towards the findings. Also, multiple injuries to the same player were not taken into account. We are working on further studies to account for these limitations. Also, multi-team studies should be performed before being confident that this is the overall picture in elite youth football.